Is Joe Rogan being censored? Controversy at Spotify. Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. The internet has a dark underbelly. What? No, not the dark web and child sex trafficking. That's kid stuff. I'm talking about something much more sinister. The intellectual dark web. The supposed thinking wing of the alt-right. Which makes them sound scary, but also stupid. Like Herman Munster. Vox describes the intellectual dark web as people who are just like Donald Trump supporters and the online alt-right because they have lost social status, which is leading them to frustration and resentment. And according to Vice, one man is acting as the gateway to the intellectual dark web. Joe Rogan. I'm sure most of you watching have never heard of Joe Rogan. He seems pretty fringe, according to all these mainstream media articles. But he apparently hosts a podcast with millions of listeners called the Joe Rogan Experience. And what is that experience? Well, I've never listened to it myself. But you know what I do listen to? The View.
When you talk about a Joe Rogan who has notably made misogynistic, racist, homophobic comments, that is someone who I have no interest in being given that kind of...
So before you guys get into a two-way discussion, let me ask...
I love that show. What's that, Shelley? Are you saying men aren't allowed to love The View? What do you mean no one is allowed to love The View? Sorry, Shelley. You can't tell me what I can't watch. The View tells me what I can't watch. For example, Joe Rogan. Rogan has this radical free speech orientation and free thinking ideology. Horrible. And he's had guests on his show with dangerous ideas, like fringe Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang. That's according to Slate. And I'm really grateful for them for having done the research, so I don't have to. In a 5,200-word article about a guy they say looks like a muscular thumb, Slate says grifters, who include the President of the United States, profit by obscuring facts for personal gain, and that Rogan has given these people a safe space where they and their grifts can feel right at home. After all, a love of intellectual shortcuts is one of the founding principles of Trumpism. So Joe Rogan and all his grifter guests are Trumpists, even Andrew Yang. I'm shocked. But you know, if there's one thing that I learned in elementary school, it's that you should always believe the worst possible things that you hear about other people. Like how David Jenkins told me Lindsay Ellison told him that Brandon Donovan ate worms every day during recess. What's that, Shelley? Of course I didn't ask Brendan whether it was true. Why would I talk to someone who eats worms? It's disgusting. And that's exactly why Joe Rogan shouldn't talk to the people he has on his show. Because the guests that Joe Rogan has on, they claim to be personally liberal. Like Rogan, they mostly all claim to go left on everything, even as they profess reactionary ideas. Reactionary ideas. At this point, it sounds to me like these might even be counter-revolutionary ideas. If only we could have some kind of cultural revolution to fix this. For some reason, Joe Rogan thinks the internet should be a place for the free exchange of ideas, even ideas that are controversial or might offend someone. And he claims to be a liberal. What's that, Shelley? President Obama also called for a free and open internet? Well, obviously President Obama was a pro-Trump reactionary. Now you might say, Joe Rogan's guests are just talking, sharing ideas. But ideas are dangerous, except for Antifa. And now, Joe Rogan's podcast has caused a huge controversy at one of the biggest podcasting platforms, Spotify. And I'll tell you how after the break. Welcome back. So as we've learned from unbiased news sources like Vox and my personal favorite, The View, Joe Rogan is making a lot of money promoting guests with far-right extremist views. But despite that, Spotify recently struck a deal with Joe Rogan worth more than $100 million. Now, at first it seemed like this deal might be a good thing. Spotify seemed to have harmonized the show a bit by removing some of his more offensive episodes, featuring Alex Jones and other liars. But apparently, Spotify didn't purge enough episodes. There are still some episodes online that are far too problematic for anyone to listen to. As I said, ideas are dangerous, people. And this is causing a split in the company. Some Spotify employees are demanding direct editorial oversight of the Joe Rogan podcast. That includes the ability to directly edit or remove sections of upcoming interviews, or block the uploading of episodes deemed problematic. And whoever these employees are, I trust them. I'm sure the fact that they work for Spotify means they know more than I do about what I should or shouldn't listen to. According to Vice, these employees had a meeting with Spotify leadership questioning their decision to allow Joe Rogan on with only limited censorship. One of the submitted questions was, many LGBTQAI+/ally Spotifyers feel unwelcome and alienated because of leadership's response in Joe Rogan Experience conversations. What is your message to those employees? And yet, Spotify CEO Daniel Ek defended keeping the transphobic content online. The episode in question was an interview with Abigail Shrier. She's a Wall Street Journal writer and author of Irreversible Damage, the Transgender Craze Seducing Our Daughters. Now, I haven't personally listened to that episode or read her book, but if the media is telling me it's transphobic, then it must be. And so nobody should be allowed to listen to it. Otherwise, they might come to a different and wrong conclusion. The Spotify CEO said, Joe Rogan and the episode in question have been reviewed extensively. The fact that we aren't changing our position doesn't mean we aren't listening. It just means we made a different judgment call. Obviously, Spotify is making a judgment call to be transphobic, and you might want to delete your account. And if you don't, maybe you're transphobic too. Some Spotify employees are threatening to strike if they aren't given editorial oversight. And yet, it still seems like Spotify CEO Daniel Ek wants to be on the wrong side of history, because Spotify hasn't even discussed it with Joe Rogan. Rogan said, they have literally said nothing to me about it. Zero. It's never come up. He then goes on to mock Spotify employees' search for social justice by saying, I get it, you're a 23-year-old woke kid. Well, Mr. Rogan, let's see how long your little podcast lasts without the 23-year-old woke kids listening. Now, I hope that after all of the articles I've shown you criticizing Joe Rogan, you know what a right-wing extremist he must be. And that's why I haven't actually played you any clips from his show. That's because you shouldn't be listening to Joe Rogan at all. Otherwise, you might come to a different and wrong conclusion. Plus, why would you want to listen to someone who talks to people who eat worms? And that's why I would never go on the Joe Rogan Experience, even if he asked, which he hasn't. But if you, my amazing fans, would like to see me on the Joe Rogan Experience, maybe I'd consider it. Send Joe Rogan a message on Twitter and Instagram if you'd like to see the China Uncensored and America Uncovered team on the Joe Rogan Experience. That is, if it's still around after the Spotify brouhaha. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Stay safe and keep away from dangerous ideas and worms.